Welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches making the big time where they're at. Today, our host, Coach Preston Peterson, interviews a high school strength coach who is creating a big time strength conditioning experience for their student athletes. Today's episode is sponsored by TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr provides strength conditioning software to athletics programs around the country. Whether you write your own programs or want access to over 100 templates, TeamBuildr can make your program more efficient, more accountable, and smarter when it comes to measuring your team's effort in the weight room. Visit their website and start a 14-day free trial at teambuildr.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey guys, I'm excited to bring you this week's episode with Coach Tully Chapman. Coach Chapman is the strength and conditioning coach at Grandville High School in Grandville, Michigan. Since January of 2014, Coach has worked with all varsity sports, including the Bulldogs' 2015 competitive cheer state champions, the 2015 and 2016 hockey state runner-up, and the 2017 softball state runner-up. A graduate of Trine University, he played 4 years of varsity football for the Thunder while earning his bachelor's degree in exercise science. After graduation, Coach interned at Northwestern State University in Louisiana, working with football, baseball, and track and field. He is also a certified Level 1 sports performance coach through USA Weightlifting. In this episode, we discuss Coach's background and how he got to Grandville, what the culture of his program is like, how he has made the big time where he's at, how Coach implements his school-wide unified program, resources that Coach recommends, and much more. Now, here's Coach Chapman. Hey, Coach. Thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time on your weekend to invest in the strength and conditioning community and let them know what you're doing at Grandville. And I just wanted to start out with just asking you where you're at, what's your background, and where you want to go.
Sure. I'm at Grandville High School in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's on the southwest side of Grand Rapids. And I've kind of taken an interesting path, I would say different than maybe other high school strength coaches. I don't know all coaches' path, of course, but I played college football at Trine University in Angola, Indiana. And when I was there, they changed over a bunch of majors. My original major was fitness and recreational programming. They changed that to exercise science. So it's one of the first graduating classes of exercise science. And I went through a bunch of internships doing personal training and PT, shadowing, and all sorts of different things, and found out that I didn't want to do sports medicine or any of those other kind of things. So my last internship was at IPFW, just kind of doing some volunteer time in Fort Wayne. So that was about a 45-minute drive. And that's when I got the itch, beyond my own training with weightlifting for football and wrestling in high school. I just got the itch to continue to work with athletes and invest in them. So from there, I went to Northwestern State University in Natchitoches, Louisiana. And that's where I actually picked up the Olympic list, because when I was growing up, I don't know if I haven't had anybody else have this experience, but people when I was growing up would always call the Olympic list clean, bench, squat, and deadlift. I don't know if you have had that experience, Coach. But so I didn't have any idea how to snatch or clean and jerk. And so when I was down there, I picked those up and learned a ton, especially on that side of things, for just how, a professional weight room should run. And then from there, as that was wrapping up, there wasn't any GA or job available for me. So I had to get another job, of course. And I looked all over, looked on the football scoop, and found a posting for a high school job at Truman High School in the Detroit area. And a buddy of mine, fraternity brother, and our quarterback in college actually went to high school there. So I just applied for the job and ended up getting it. And that was coaching football and defensive backs coach. And it was an interesting community. It was a very diverse school, an odd mix of different low income, wealthy families, all sorts of different situations all over the place. But I ended up living in not very nice housing, and it was just not a great situation. So when our head football coach got hired at Grandville, he, at the end of the season, he asked me to come out and be a strength coach, and it was a no-brainer because my then girlfriend, now wife, was going to Grand Valley State, which is about 20 minutes away from Granville. So I was like, shoot, I'm going to pick up and move and see what I can do out at Granville. So it was just volunteering and working all sorts of different odd jobs at first. And it just so happened to be sheer dumb luck that Granville opened up a strength coaching full-time position when they built a new weight room, and I interviewed it and totally did not expect to get it, but here we are. So yeah, I just feel really, really blessed to be in a community that has been investing in strength and conditioning.
That is a really cool path, going from a major that completely switched on you and then trying to find what you really wanted to do, and then ending up in a spot where you're just like, everything kind of fit together. Is kind of a cool story, just to be able to, let others know within the industry that there's all sorts of ways to get where you want to go, and then be able to do what you want to do ultimately. And so I think it's a really cool story, Coach. So what is your program's mission statement and core values at Grandville?
We have been developing a different approach to some things. It's changed quite a bit over the time that I've been at Granville. I've been at Granville for 3 years, and our program has changed just an absolute ton. I mean, actually, I should say I've been at Granville for 5 years. I've been full-time for 3. So when I first got to Granville, there was nothing in place. It was just, of course, the football team listed, but then there was just a couple baseball players and a couple wrestlers, and the facility was this long, weird hallway closet thing on the upstairs between 2 gymnasiums, and it was just a really odd thing. But we advertised for a month to start weightlifting, and the very first session we had 11 kids show up. So needless to say, we were a little bit worried at the time. Now, fast forward to this year, after, really getting buy-in from all the coaches and community and things like that, we average around 500 kids a day in our weight room, and we'll have, I think we have over 800 kids currently involved in some way, from middle school all the way up through high school. So we've really been trying to refigure everything and create a unified program. So our mission statement is really to not only make our kids, of course, stronger, but I should say, I'll just read it verbatim what it says, is to build mentally and physically stronger students so that together as a school we can all achieve more. I talked to you a little bit about, before we started recording, that our school is 1,800 students, which is big compared to a lot of schools and coaches that you probably talk to, but we're one of the smaller in our conference. So we kind of have a blue-collar mentality that we all need to band together, and we need kids to play multiple sports, and we need everybody to come out to events to cheer each other on, and I really try to build that cohesion as an entire school, and not just make it, this is football training, this is cheer training, this is hockey training. We really want everybody together moving in the same direction.
That is awesome that there's so many different ways that you can get to the point where you're at, right? So you started at 11 and now you're averaging over 500 a day is just remarkable. And one of the things that, the first thing I would think of is you probably had to create an awesome culture to be able to get that buy-in. What is the culture of your program? What would that look like for somebody coming in and just kind of observing?
Yeah, I think the thing that we talk about more than anything is ownership. If you've read, I'm sure somebody's talked in the podcast about Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. That book was huge for me to read, and I try to sow a lot of lessons from that book into our kids. But really, I just want our kids to understand that you really can work incredibly hard and see amazing things happen. So our culture is really come in consistently and work harder than anybody in the conference, anybody in the state, anybody in the country. And we really try to to get our kids to buy into the idea of just being gritty and working hard. Our school as a whole, the little mantra that people say is "got grit," and that's something that definitely carries over into the weight room. Is we want our kids to just be tough and gritty and working hard, and of course, like we talked about before, doing it together, and everybody is pulling in that same direction.
How do you establish that grit that you're talking about? Is that something that your school tries to do together, or is that something specific to your weight room that you're trying to establish that idea of grit?
Yeah, I think as a school, it's kind of a mindset, like I said, our school kind of mantra there is got grit. But on my side of things, I just try to continuously, sew it into them, particularly through all of our athletes get a folder now and they get a packet. And in there is our strength and conditioning standards, our the expectations and of course, the consequences for not meeting those expectations. And we just try to continuously hold our kids to the highest standard that we can in the weight room. I am not afraid to kick kids out of our weight room sometimes, or have them do extra cleaning, or, if I find out that kids are not representing the weight room well in other places, I think that carries over as well. So kids are held to the same standard, not only in the weight room, but also in their classes as well.
Very cool. Having those high expectations for athletes is something that I feel has yielded awesome results, just because, kids, they want expectations. They want to hit those things. And they know that, like if we have their best interest for them, they're going to be able to excel. And, it's that trust that you're building with them and all that type of stuff. I just think that the idea of grit and you kind of taking that into the weight room because your school's using it as a mantra is something that I'm going to try to take away a little bit from this is how are we establishing that blue collar type of work ethic that you talked about?
I mean, one thing that I talk to coaches about a lot is like, we want to be tougher. We want to be, we want our kids to be more, accountable. We want them to be more or less entitled, all those kinds of things. And they say them, and then, you start peeling away layers. And a lot of coaches say those things, but they don't lay out what that means for their program. So that was a big thing that I would spend a lot of time talking to our coaches and then myself coming up with, okay, here's what we want from our kids, and then this is what it actually looks like. So like when I tell kids to be gritty, it means that they're constantly working. There's no downtime. There's no, if their time allows, no days off, those kinds of things. So that was something that was huge for us, was actually laying out what our standards were and what that looks like. So that way there's more of a measurable thing. There's more of something for kids to see and be able to feed off other kids.
There's something to say about just defining what the standard is. I think that's a great way to do it, and the more and more I think about this idea of grit and what you're talking about there, and if I'm truly defining that as well as I could right now, and that makes me just think, okay, what would be the next step to make sure that, I'm implementing this school-wide?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of had its ebb and flow. Myself personally as a coach, sometimes because I'm working with so many athletes and I don't spend a lot of time with other coaches and things like that, sometimes on my side of things, I will let it slip a little bit. So right now, I would say it's the best it's ever been. Over the summer, it was probably actually close to some of the worst it's ever been, just because, I think myself and the coaches that I work with, we all got kind of complacent. So that was kind of eye-opening. This fall, we did not have a very successful fall. But since we've started our strength and conditioning program, our school has been as successful as it's ever been. So it is yielding us results. Currently, we are on a little bit of a slump, but we're hoping that our winter sports have a great season after, of course, an eye-opening fall.
That's awesome that you can see that effect across the school. You go from switching to a new school and volunteering for a long time, getting 11 kids now to 500 a day. You've had to have some challenges along the way to get the program to where it's at now. What's one of those challenges that you've had and maybe one of the ways that you overcame it?
Whew, yeah, the list of that is long. I mentioned a little, our school, my college switched over to exercise science, and it wasn't really centered towards strength and conditioning. So even with the internships I did, being in a collegiate weight room is completely different than working by yourself in a high school weight room. So I've made a lot of mistakes for sure, and have kind of learned the hard way sometimes. But I would have to say the biggest challenge that I've had to overcome is just learning how to be more of a manager. I'm only 27 years old, so I really went from being an employee for other people to essentially running the show by myself. So I had to really learn how to, like we talked about, set standards and do those kinds of things, but also know how to establish relationships, professional relationships with other coaches. I had to learn how to schedule the weight room right. As more teams added in, there are times when we are just crunched in there, and you have to push and pull, obviously, people's training times, but also just balance coaches and what they want out of their training and all those kinds of things. So that was been probably the biggest challenge, has just been learning how to do more than just the X's and O's of coaching. It's easy for me to teach a kid how to back squat or do the Olympic lifts or do those kinds of things. It's hard for me sometimes to, remember to do all the office paperwork and scheduling and meetings and all those things that need to be done to run our facility as well as it is.
I would say that I can relate, as far as I truly love, and you probably hear from most strength coaches, I truly love being able to be coaching on the floor and being able to develop relationships with athletes and doing all those things. But, like when it comes down to the management of people, and that's all the way from administration to coaches to the student athletes, all of that type of stuff was just an eye-opening experience for me, going from, maybe at the collegiate level where I was a graduate assistant and what it looked like there, talking to the 3 or 4 sports that I was working with, and then all the way to, working with 18 sports or the number of other teachers that I have to talk to and the administration. And it's just really, really cool to see that process now and how much I've developed. And I bet you when you look back at your career so far, you're just like, man, the amount that I've had to learn in a very short amount of time turns out to be an awesome experience that leads to better things.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's trial and error, but it's also been through the National High School Strength Coaches Association. Man, that's been one of the best things that's happened in my career. That's becoming a thing, because I used to go to NSCA conferences and things like that, and I would get some things out of it, but the networking and then the actual takeaways from all the high school strength coaches stuff that I've been a part of has really revolutionized my career. That was really something that it sped up my process of having to learn, because I could go meet with other coaches and be like, hey, here's, the problem I'm having. How have you approached that same thing? And so that's really, really been revolutionary for me.
No doubt. I would have to say the same thing, and that's actually where I met you too, was at the national conference. So it's like, yeah, it was one of those things where, the connections that stem from that, and then just the ability to learn from other people's experience. So you don't have to have the headache of doing it all that experience on your own. But there's no doubt that there are so many lessons to be learned from the coaches that have fully invested in helping other people out. And that's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast so much, is because, coaches are willing to share, to teach others. Coaches want to be able to invest in other people. And I think that's really cool that the organization, the NHS SCA, is really putting people in a position to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Strength coaching, more than I've seen in a lot of other professions, people are really just, trying to help each other as much as possible. Sometimes I feel like football coaches do meet with each other and things, but how much are they actually sharing at clinics and things like that? So it is amazing just how generous so many strength coaches are, and how selfless they are, just trying to help as many people as possible, not only their own kids, but then other coaches and things like that. It's truly incredible.
Right. Truth. So what is a unique way that you're making the big time where you're at? And that's something that we try to ask a decent amount within the show. And so far you've given examples of growing a program to where it's been at now and the success that you guys have had. What's one of those interesting or unique ways that you're making that big time?
Man, yeah, I couldn't be more proud of our ability to have unified our school. We are in a unique place. Not only, like I said, we have really grown and made our program massive, but we have a unique approach to strength and conditioning that I've been able to get our coaches and our administration and our athletic director have helped me, of course. But our vision is not that strength and conditioning is sport specific. It's just trying to make all of our kids better, stronger, healthier human beings. So something that I think is really unique in our strength and conditioning program is we don't do sport specific off-season groups. We only do open groups. So within a single group, you have a football player, a hockey player, a cheerleader, you'll have cross-country kids, soccer players, all within one session, doing the same kind of training, because I firmly believe that the training that we do, especially in our off-season groups, is just meant to make them, better athletes. So that's something that I think has been huge for us is getting rid of the mindset of doing sport-specific training, and that's also carried over into having less single sport athletes. It was a big time culture at our school before we opened up our strength and conditioning program that kids would just play one sport. And now all of our coaches are on the same page with kids playing as many sports as possible.
What an awesome transition that way. Being able to cross boundaries and borders of sports teams is huge. And you talk about school culture in general. I can't imagine a better way to get a school's like all the way 9 through 12, a school's culture to change quickly. That's really cool, Coach, that you've got so many people going in the same direction. And I stand with you, man. I think a unified program is the best way to go, especially for our age group. The 14 or 15-year-old athlete all the way into a senior. I think there's no better way to do it than to be unified in that way and be able to train everybody like they are an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, the path is really laid out for the kids kind of ahead of time, when they're freshmen and sophomores and even juniors. Most of the time they haven't done enough training and they're not strong enough to where anything sport specific is going to be beneficial in the first place. And then even if they are singling out a single sport, obviously we don't want to continuously load up the same movements that they're doing in their sport all the time. Gary Schofield talks about, if anything, the weight room should, maybe be the opposite of what we're doing in our sport to try to counteract all that repetitive motion. So, and then really by the time they get to seniors, if they're going to play a college sport, they will probably get a packet and, we'll have some sort of communication from a coach. So then they can already start that transition to a more specific training program. So that's something that I'm glad that our coaches and kids and parents have bought into.
No doubt. I think that's great. You've talked about unifying the program, but what does your training philosophy look like? I know that's a broad term, training philosophy, but what's it look like to be an athlete within your program?
I'm kind of a book nerd in the fact that I just love to consume. For a long time, it was consuming the actual X's and O's of training between reading Joe Ken's tier system, reading triphasic training by Cal Dietz, all those coaches. So we've melded quite a few different philosophies, but we are an Olympic lifting-based program. So within a week, we will snatch, clean, and jerk. But then in the session itself, we do follow a tier system. So, doing a total body lift, which is usually going to be an Olympic lift or variation, a lower body lift, and then an upper body lift, and then continuing that rotation throughout the week. We also we follow a pretty rigid structure of triphasic training where we'll do a phase of eccentric focused movements, a phase of isometric focused movements, and a phase of concentric focused, or essentially peaking for the start of the next season. So between all those things, I think we get a really great product of course, building speed, power, strength, hypertrophy, all those kinds of things. And right now, I actually feel like our program is the best it's ever been put together. I really put a lot of work into our current training program, and our kids are really, really seeing excellent results.
How are some of the ways that you're looking for results? What are some of the key performance indicators that you guys use to measure, and what is the timeline?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do our testing every quarter. So based on the athletic schedule, we will test 2 weeks before every season. So 2 weeks before fall sports start, 2 weeks before winter sports start, so on and so forth. And for simplicity's purpose, because we have so many kids and we don't have enough coaches to do all the testing and things, we do 3 lifts. Our 3 foundational lifts that we test are clean, bench press, and back squat. And then our field tests are vertical jump, pro agility shuttle, and we're playing around with the running test. We currently do 30-yard dashes, and that's because our hallway outside of our weight room, we have just a perfect amount of space to do a 30-yard dash with enough room for the kids to stop. So that's why we do a 30-yard dash. I would like to get a laser timing system to do flying 10s. I think it's a little bit safer and get a little bit better numbers on it. But so those are our tests. And like I said, we test them every quarter, but also towards the end of different phases of programming, we'll do kind of the joker sets, trial sets idea of doing some rep maxes. Mm-hmm. To allow kids to kind of update, because we do have some kids that will just, once they get consistency, will have freakish changes to the amount of weight that they can lift. Mm-hmm. So we do try to update that occasionally throughout training cycles.
Right. Is this delivered to the athletes through like Excel? You guys using like Team Builder or anything like that? Or how do you get 500 athletes on the same page?
Yeah, we use Team Builder, and it's been, like I said, the National High School Strength Coaches Association was a huge change in my career, and then going from printing Excel sheets to using Team Builder, night and day. I mean, Team Builder has allowed me to, of course, run all sorts of metrics and, do the reverse engineering of collecting data and those things, but it's saved me, 10 to probably at least 10 hours every week from what I used to do with collecting sheets and updating maxes and doing all those things by hand. So, that Team Builder has absolutely made our program run a million times smoother. I could not be happier with that product.
That's awesome. That's one of the things that we hear from so many coaches is the application of using some sort of software. And for us, like we talk about Team Builder a lot, but man, it is a game changer. It's one of those things where it will definitely put coaches able to coach more, right? Instead of having to do so much of the background work with it. So very cool in that way.
Yeah. One of the things I really love about Team Builder is because we have so many kids, our program is unified. It's not uniform. So when a kid comes in, because we have Team Builder, it makes it a lot easier for me to plug and chug what the kids need based on their own individual training sessions. So say I got a kid with a bad shoulder that needs to switch from back squatting to like a safety bar squat, they can just sub that exercise themselves. And that speeds up that process, as well as I give them options at times. You just using like one of the tags, like say mobility. I'll just tag that they need to do 5 sets of 15 seconds of mobility. And then those kids get to tailor the program to some of the guidelines we give them, like work on something that is a weakness of yours, or, hammer out something that's sore from yesterday's training session or whatever. So that was another thing that was huge, was making it a lot easier for kids to tailor the programs to themselves within a single session.
That's awesome, Coach. You've got a lot of stuff going on there that just makes it run smoothly. I think that being able to, you made the distinction there. What was it? Unified, not uniform. That's an awesome concept to think about. And I like the terminology with that.
Yeah, that's honestly, that was one of the phrases that I think really sold our program to all of the coaches. I individually met with all of our, well, of course, our athletic director, our superintendent, all of our administrators, principal, assistant principals, and then I met with as many coaches as I could, as many parents as I could, and that was the thing that I said as often as possible was unified, not uniform. We want all of our kids moving in the same direction and following essentially the same training methods because they're human beings and they need to get better that way, but we're also going to tailor as much as we can to each child's individual needs.
There's a lot of information to unpack from what you've talked about today. One of the things I want to ask you before we get to our quick 5 questions at the end is what's something that you're really interested in learning right now? What's something that you are just like, this is the next thing that I'm going to spend a lot of time of improving and getting better at as a coach?
Yeah, I'm not complacent about it, but I feel very comfortable with the X's and O's of actual weightlifting. I know I've said that quite a few times, but I'm very comfortable with coming up with sets and reps and training programs themselves that make our kids stronger. So my big thing really since the summer has been consuming as much content about culture and sports psychology and leadership. Of course, on my end, wanting to be a better leader of young men and young women, but of course, as well, figuring out how to impart that into them. I don't care how strong our kids when they leave our weight room. When they graduate, I want them to be incredible human beings. I don't really care about any of the wins and losses. Of course, that stuff is fun, and that's part of the reason why we do it, but I really want our kids to leave Grandville High School as some incredible human beings. So that's what I've really been diving into, trying to read books and articles and watch videos that are regarding the intangibles of strength and conditioning.
Very sweet stuff. That's stuff that I always nerd out about. That's the conversations that I have with strength coaches that I've had in the past or other coaches in general. It's like, what are the things that you're doing to get people where they want to go, right? And what's that look like to be, like what you say, awesome human beings? And that's really cool that that's your focus right now. If you've got any awesome information or places that you go for that, what's something that you go to for those sources of information?
Especially the High School Strength Coaches Association, seeing how other people are doing it. Jeremy Boone, man, that guy puts out some great stuff regarding the intangibles of strength and conditioning. I also really like the Jeff Jansen series of books and things like that. I've been diving into those. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but he has a whole progression for kids to and athletes to learn culture and those kinds of things. So I've really been diving into that and trying to figure out how we can plug nuggets of that into our training and things like that. So I really like both of those quite a bit.
Yeah, what you were talking about there at the end, something that we've looked at, some of the documents that he's put out there. Very interesting stuff. Some of the things that you talk about, expectations and where athletes fall in a continuum of, what do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, commitment.
Yeah, the commitment continuum. Yeah, that's something that a lot of coaches have that as a banner in their weight room. They get a printout of it in their individual workout packets. Our kids have folders now. We used to do everything on their cell phones for Team Builder, but we were having a lot of problems with kids like forgetting their cell phones and things like that. So now we we print their packets every week and they keep a training log. And at the back of that is all of their dog mentality. We're the Bulldogs, so dog mentality things about what the weight room standards are, what our core values are, what the mission statement is, and then it has that championship commitment continuum in the back. And so that's just a great reference to be able to, have the kids at the beginning of the session pull that out and be like, hey, where do you fall on this? Are you, doing the extra stuff? Are you holding yourself to high standards? Are you compelled to bring other people with you? That's the big one that we're trying to hammer out right now is handle your business and then bring some other people along with you.
I think that you have a lot of things going on at Grandville that are just big time. And one of the deals that I always get excited about after these talks is like implementing some of the things that you've talked about or other coaches have talked about. And so some of the things that just like quickly what I'm thinking about is some of the ownership and grit stuff that you talked about, the standards, and then being able to put that in a place that students see it daily. So your dog mentality and some of the stuff that you talk about in your packet, those are some of the things I'm just like, okay, I got to get some of this going on. So we're coming up at the end of the show here where I'm going to ask you 5 questions. And then at the end, I'll let you give us the best ways to get a hold of you. You ready for this?
Sure. Yeah,
awesome.
Let's do it.
All right. What's your favorite book?
The one that was probably most influential in my career was New Functional Strength by Mike Boyle.
That's one of the ones that I have on my list right now. Have not read it, but now that you're talking about it, I think I gotta get that rolling. Got to get that one going over Christmas break here.
Yeah, I picked it up right when I started high school coaching, and it really revolutionized the way that I looked at training.
How about the person that's influenced you the most?
That one's gonna feed off the other one. I think Mike Boyle. Seeing him speak. Getting to meet him and then reading his books has been a huge influence professionally on my career. I've had a lot of incredible people, of course, my mother and coaches and things like that. But in recent history, the way Mike Boyle thinks about strength and conditioning, I love that he starts everything with, what if the way we've always done it is the wrong way? That really changed my mindset and really, got me thinking differently about strength and conditioning.
He does a lot of that, a lot of thought-provoking stuff. And I think that's a great way to check where you're at and make sure it's where you want to go. How about your favorite quote?
The one I just gave you is a pretty good one, but I used to, when I was in high school, or not high school, my junior year of college, one of my best friends passed away, and I was in a pretty dark place. And every morning, I would wake up and my alarm clock would be Eric Thomas, the hip hop preacher guy, saying, you will only be successful if you want success as bad as you want to breathe. And that was just something that really checked my commitment every single morning when I woke up.
That's a good one. I like that one. All right. So you have 15 minutes to train. You yourself, what are you doing?
Probably an Olympic lift. I used to be a high level Olympic lifter competitively, so I really like to snatch, clean, or jerk. And then I would probably do, some sort of upper body pull. I like to do pull-ups and rows quite a bit. So, between those two, 15 minutes, couple sets of an Olympic lift and some upper body pulling and get out.
Who is a small school coach who's killing it, deserves a shout out?
Our Northern Michigan director, Doug Lee, at Traverse City Central High School, has really, really, more than anybody I've met, built a program from the bottom up. I mean, he has written hundreds of thousands of dollars, I believe, in grants to get new equipment, and he has all sorts of great things going on up there. He does velocity-based training, and he's got a great middle school program that they just hired a new coach for, and he's really, really doing great things.
Awesome stuff. I'm going to have to reach out to him. What is the best way for, if somebody's listening to this show, for them to get a hold of you?
Sure. I'm very, very quick about answering my email. So my email is tchapman, CHAPMAN @gpsbulldogs.org. So that's like, if you really want to get a hold of me, that's a good way. If you want to see what we're doing, I would say follow us on Twitter and Instagram, which is @Grandville SC. And that's going to show you all of our training and things that we have going on at the high school.
Coach, I appreciate you taking the time to record the show, to invest in strength and conditioning, and to talk about your program and everything that you're doing there and how you're making the big time where you're at.
Hey, I appreciate it. It's been fun. And if anybody's listening that is a high school strength coach, if you're not a part of the National High School Strength Coaches Association, you need to jump on that. It's like I said, it's been revolutionary for my career, and I really love the direction that high school strength and conditioning is headed.
Thank you.